During the 2016 Deco-crete Expo, Jason Geiser, owner of Decocrete, led a panel discussion on sealers in an effort to resolve common issues with concrete sealers and eliminate preconceived falsehoods. Check the description of the video for a list of questions and timestamps.
Just by a show of hands, how many of you have ever had problems with a sealer? Okay, for those of you that didn't put your hands up, you're lying. I can promise you that, because that's kind of gave this industry, I mean, it's been the biggest problem, okay? And at Decocrete, you know, we're always trying to find solutions to those problems, okay? Trust me, I know it's kind of been, a problem, especially when the VOC laws changed and, all that stuff. It's been a huge industry problem. That's why we decided, when we were talking about the show, we decided, you know what, let's have a discussion about this where you guys can ask questions and we can give answers. So my name's Jason. I own Deco-Crete Supply, and I'm going to be the moderator. Okay, so I got these three guys up here that are skilled or have information on different questions that could come up. And I'm just going to direct the questions to one of them to answer. The goal of this thing is just to add value to you guys. Okay, we want to try to make it easier out in the field. We want to because the way I look at it, if everybody's doing good work, it helps everybody. If everybody's putting down the sealers right and doing it right, it helps everybody. The other thing is sealers. You don't know how many times homeowners come in our shop and are to the point where, they say, man, I wish I wouldn't even done stamped concrete if I'd have known that the sealer was going to be like this. Whether it be the contractor doesn't call them back, okay, because they don't want to reseal it or because they're scared to do it, or, the homeowner's done it themselves. They go to Lowe's or Home Depot and they sell them something water-based, and they put it on top of the solvent-based sealer, and it fails. And then they have a mess. Then it's a complete mess at that point. So our job, what we do, we spend, I don't know how many hours and how much effort we put into trying to educate people on these products and how to put them down, not just the contractors, but the homeowners too.
Just your comment on breathable versus non-breathable sealers. I think there's a difference.
Todd, why don't you go ahead and do that one?
Okay, are you talking about exterior or interior? Exterior, okay. Your acrylic sealers are breathable, solvent and waterborne. One of the big problems people have are, urethanes, epoxies, chemical active, two-component systems are typically not breathable. They're chemically reacted to where there's the blanket effect. So hydrostatic pressure, unless you have a moisture mitigating coating down prior to that, you're going to have a moisture coming through and it's going to lift it up, blister, and pop it off. Where an acrylic sealer is, unless you put on multiple coats, it's breathable and moisture will migrate through, just such as a curing seal. So one thing we see in the industry is, we were just talking about a few minutes ago, like on a stamped concrete exterior, people want that really high gloss.
If you guys don't, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second.
Go ahead.
If you don't hear anything today, listen to this. Listen to what they're saying.
Right, yeah. Just
Yeah.
a couple words.
Yeah. Somebody's doing a stamped concrete driveway. They do it today. They wash it off in the morning, and the next morning and that afternoon they go and put 2 coats of any acrylic sealer that's say 25% solids, like their Diamond Shine or a Super Stamp Steel. Well, 1 coat is 25% solids and it breathes. You put the second coat on right then, now you got 50% solids. That doesn't breathe. You might as well have a urethane on it at that point. That first 28 days during the cure, you're going to have hydrostatic pressure coming through and pushing against that, and that first 28 days with those 2 coats, you're going to cause the damage to the sealer that's going to be the reason. And in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you're going to start having white spots from delamination. And you'll have bubbling. You put that second coat, you leave, it looks fine. Next day, they say you've got bubbles, you know, throughout the system, or the whole driveway, due to and it's from the hydrostatic pressure from the moisture. You know, the concrete's a day old, 2 days old, and the sun's heated up, and it's pulling it through. That top coat is, the second coat basically sealed that off, and it's no longer breathable, and that creates tremendous problems. So breathability in exterior coatings is huge, and a lot of the products that we're going to talk about, like D1, for example, it's a lower solid system that breathes excellent and adds water repellency, meets the cure and seal specs. It just doesn't have that high gloss that people have seen, and you know, contract comes out, shows the homeowner a portfolio, and it's super glossy, like this stamp section there, which that's urethane, I believe, isn't it? That's epoxy and urethane. Well, you know, they show pictures like that, and in a portfolio, well, the homeowner sees it and it's around the pool. Oh, I want that. Well, you do that, you're going to see damage to it. The only way to get that really high gloss will be 2 coats on a lot of systems, and you don't have breathability. It's, I guess.
The point is, you can take a breathable sealer and make it unbreathable by putting too much on.
Yes,
and
yeah,
that
happens
is the
all the
number one
time.
biggest problem.
Yeah, in order to be able to seal stamp concrete and make it look uniform with a 25% solid sealer, it almost takes 2 coats. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it might look spotchy because, you know, a lot of times it's more porous in certain areas. You know, let's say it was in the shade, one spot, and in the sun, another spot when you were stamping. Well, the sealer's going to take different at different spots. So in order to seal it all in, a lot of times it almost takes, it has to take 2 coats to make it look right with those high gloss sealers. And at that point, they're not breathable.
So what are you saying? Put first coat on, wait 29 days for second coat?
That would be a better way to do it, but
Wait 29 days for all coats.
well, here's the problem. I know you guys too well because we deal with you all the time. You're not going to wait 29 days to get paid. You know?
That's when you get paid, is when that coated sealer goes on.
Right. That's a lot of time when you get paid. So we're going to, but you know, everybody has a different system, but the bottom line is, you know, if you put too much on initially with that concrete still hydrating, you're going to have problems.
Okay, so, I mean, if we wait 29 days, are we going to have a problem with the second coat?
No. Once you've waited 29, if you put a thin coat just to cure it, like, you know, you could even do that, I still would wait a couple days.
Well, I try to wait 5 to 7 days.
Yes.
And that's good.
That's good. Now with the D1, the stuff we're talking about, or you know, that product you could put on a week later and walk away from it. Okay?
But I mean, to answer your question a little bit more, I mean, you can wait 29 days and still put way too much sealer on and still have problems. There's more to it than just waiting. You still have to put the proper amount on. But the whole point we're trying to get out is just use a thinner sealer to start off with. Give up a little bit of that shine. We've got sealers now that you can give up the shine, you're still going to get the color, and you're going to have way less problems with it. So waiting is good, but if you're out there just slathering the stuff on, even if it's 3 months later, you're still going to have the problem.
Any other questions? Are you guys on that particular issue, or do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
25% solid, you're saying 2 coats thin only.
Right, and 25
Very
is
thin.
like the max. We'd rather you use something like our D1, which is a lot less solids than that.
If I could go, I'm going to answer that, but if I could go back in time, back when stamped concrete started, and we would have these, we would never even do this 25% crap. Okay? All that's done. All that's done is made it miserable for everybody.
It was funny, we were talking earlier about like the whole high solids thing is, you know, it used to be 25% solids, and then all of a sudden this company comes out and says, oh, well, ours is 26% solids. And then you got the next guy comes out and says, well, ours is 28. And then this guy says, well, no, we got 30% solids. And they sell that it's a more high-end thing, but all they're trying to do is just get a little bit more money out of your pocket and sell you a thicker sealer. So, I mean, if you're cutting it back down, that's great, but that's kind of where it started was, well, we're going to one-up it and go a little bit heavier and make ours thicker, but that's just making the problem worse. And I tell people this all the time. All our concrete out front, it really doesn't have any shine to it at all. And people come out here and they pick out their colors, and they're fine with the way everything looks. And then you go do the job, and all of a sudden it looks like epoxy 3 days after you poured it. You know, they don't need that shine. If you guys get anything out of this, is let's get away from this high gloss shine, because that's what's causing the problems. And that's also what's making people think that a year later their concrete needs resealed because that shine's gone, when really there's still plenty of sealer left on that slab. It's just not as shiny as it was when you slathered that coat on. And so they're out there calling you and saying, we need this resealed, and you know it doesn't need resealed, so you don't reseal it for them, and then all of a sudden they just come and get their own sealer, and 3 years down the road they've put 3 more coats on there, and now they got this terrible problem, and then they're going to end up calling Billy so he can come sandblast it off for them. So let's get away from the shine and get that, just change the whole mindset that we need to give that up, and you're going to give up the problems if you give up the shine.
Yeah, I've been using the E1 Plus.
Yep.
Never had a bit of problem. Actually went back this year and looked at everything I did last year, and everything still looks good. But my biggest question is, you know, the homeowner's always asking, how often do they need to reseal with that?
D1, I mean, it shouldn't be more than every 3 years, at most.
Because I'm always asked that question, and I didn't have
He
all
didn't hear your question.
He asked how often you should reseal that then with the D1, right? And he's been using D1 for all last year, and he didn't have any problems. And he says a lot of the homeowners will ask him, you know, how often he should reseal. And for giving that plug for D1, I'll give you your $20 after. Thank you. But no. So I would say like they were saying, probably every 3 years or so. And that's why we'll talk about these little kits that we put together. This has been such a problem. I rack my brain at night. I mean, I lose sleep over this crap because I'm trying to figure this out. But we have these little kits where the homeowners come in here. We're going to sell them one of these, and it has testing solution in it, okay, that they can put on their concrete to tell them if there's sealer still on there or not, so you can prove it to them. Because they'll argue with us and stuff. Oh, there's no sealer. It's all gone. It's all gone. It's all gone. And there's plenty on there. It just doesn't look as shiny as the first day they put it on. You know what I mean? So these solutions, we have a flow chart that we're going to hand out to you in a little bit that goes through the steps that they need to take. Now, you contractors can do this same thing too for like when you go out to do a reseal. Okay? You'll be able to take some of this testing solution or whatever out there and prove to them it doesn't need any sealer on it. There's plenty on there. Okay? And that's the whole idea of it. Yeah, Mark.
Hey, Jason, would you recommend that, okay, after that 3 years, rather than put another coat of sealer on, that you look at doing a rejuvenator, and then wait another 3 years, and then resealer then after that?
It all depends on how it looks, and if there's no sealer. This here, our testing solution, it'll fizz. If it fizzes on there, then it needs resealed. If it doesn't fizz, then that means that there's still plenty of sealer on there, and then I would go with a rejuvenator. Okay, and that the homeowners, they need to see that. They need to see this. It is still repelling water. Okay, it is doing what it's supposed to do. It just doesn't look as bright and vivid as when we first put it down, and that's okay. That's why, like Jeff was saying, if we start them out with something that doesn't look bright and shiny, then they don't have nothing to compare it to. They don't know any different. And in case any of you didn't notice, rocks aren't shiny. Okay, let's get away from that mindset. Rocks are not shiny. Okay, they're meant to look duller. But that's why these new sealers, they enhance the color, but they don't leave a shine, which that's the best of both worlds. You'll never get a call back with some of these sealers that we're going to be talking about today. Next question. Okay, the Rejuvenator. Billy, do you want to explain that? You're good. He uses Billy's our best customer with Rejuvenator.
It's simply the product he uses a mix of solvents that helps melt the sealer and just basically put it back to the point when you first applied it. So when you put Rejuvenator down, you're spraying it out, letting it sit for a minute, melt the sealer, back rolling it back out, And that actually allows it also, if there's spots, you know, here and there where it's, maybe you put a thin coat down or it's just barely starting to wear off, it'll kind of redistribute that a slight bit. But for more than anything, it's giving the shine back as if it looks brand new. So for people who are very problematic and want to have shiny looking concrete every single year, and you cannot get them away from that idea, then they're going to want to put Rejuvenator on every single year. Otherwise, they're going to be putting sealer on every year, and after, like Jeff said, 3 years of putting sealer on every year, it's the only thing you can do at that point is strip it off by sandblasting, or, I mean, you can use strippers as well. I've just found sandblasting to be a better technique, but yeah, so Rejuvenator is great for that. It also is great for priming the surface if you're a little bit scared as far as maybe you have a copolymer on and you want to go to 100% acrylic, or you simply just, anytime you reseal and it's been a little while since that surface has been sealed, it's always good to do that, to melt it first. And it's almost like priming the surface, you know, you're just simply allowing the first coat of sealer that was there, especially if you didn't do it yourself, you always want to test it with Rejuvenator first, and that's one of the things in the test kit, because that tells you if it melts with the Rejuvenator and the sealer I'm putting down is melting from this Rejuvenator, they're going to melt into each other. But especially if you put that Rejuvenator down first in a thin coat and then come back an hour or so later and put down your new coat of sealer, you have a really strong bond there.
So the Rejuvenator doesn't have any sealer in there?
No. Correct. There's no sealer. It's simply solvent that helps re-emulsify the sealer so it goes back to its liquid state, and you can, as it re-hardened, it's going to re-clarify.
Do you always have to back roll?
It's a good idea, yeah, because that's going to help redistribute it too. Rejuvenator is also just good for, I mean, not just that, but to fix any problems. Let's say it was hot and you put some sealer down and the sun was beating on the slab and you got some bubbles in there. The Rejuvenator will lay those bubbles down. It's kind of like, if you guys ever done like a xylene bath, you know, on top of sealer, it's kind of like xylene just on steroids. So it does two things. First of all, it melts faster than xylene does and it dries slower. So you're getting the best of both worlds there. It's melting it better and it's drying up slower, which is the reason that sealer normally bubbles in the summertime is you're putting the sealer down and the sun's beating on it and it's just the top just skins over. But underneath it's wanting to gas and it's wanting to come up, and the only thing it can do if it's skinned over on top is make bubbles, and that's why it's doing that. So the Rejuvenator will lay all that back down, but it'll also dry really, really slow. So it's kind of like xylene, but just way better.
We've had issues where we spray too soon on a cure and seal, and we have an apparatus of kind of a white appearance like the next morning, moisture, and we use xylene most of the time to try to rectify that. Is this Rejuvenator something that I've never used that, so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, give that a try. It's like I said, it's going to do this.
Green concrete, I mean.
Yeah, no, definitely. If xylene was working for you, this is going to work even better.
The other thing that we've got to keep in mind is sometimes you have to start over. That Rejuvenator, unless you're melting through all those layers, you know, it could be the bottom one that's white, like way underneath. And if you're not melting through all those layers, you're not solving the problem. So sometimes the sealer is just too old or too many coats where that will not do it. I mean, Billy can probably go out and look at a job and know right away, like when there's, you know, way too much sealer on there, or it starts to turn yellow or whatever.
Yeah, that's a very common thing with Rejuvenator as far as testing. I know I said a little bit ago, as long as the Rejuvenator melts it, you're good to seal over top of it. Now, that gets a little tricky when you have a job that's older than 7 years old, was what I generally go by about when the VOC law change was. One way or another, if you know it's been resealed more than one time, you can't be 100% positive unless you're going to sit there for like a half an hour and try to wipe through layers and layers and then try a solution or water to make sure you're penetrating into the actual concrete. Most of the time, in the case you're talking about there's a good chance, and a lot of times I see that when I go out, is they have the old sealer before the VOC law change at the bottom of all those coats. And so, yeah, I mean, I can go out there, and they've usually tried it a lot of times before. They've called me. They've either used xylene or Rejuvenator. It looks good for a few months, like you said, because it's melting the newer sealer on top. It's filling in the little spots, you know, the little cracks and things. But then after that eventually starts to delaminate, as it always will, because it doesn't bond to that bottom coat. That's when you realize, okay, well, it's a bigger issue than just Rejuvenator can fix, and that's where you go to sandblasting. A lot of times I recommend to most customers who are going to have to sandblast. If it's something you're not 100% sure on what's going on, let's try Rejuvenator first. It's a cheaper product, or if they even want to do it themselves, or contractors as well, try that first. If it doesn't work or it comes back, then you go to sandblasting. So that's generally what I go by.
I got 2 jobs I did easy 20 years ago. Over there put Thompson's water seal. Anyway, I got a strip them this year. So basically, we have nobody that does sandblasting work on the same kind. I'm from Maryland, so.
I would suggest you start. It's my 3rd year in it, and I got to say, it's definitely a profitable thing. Again, because most people don't want to do it, and there's not a lot of people doing it. So if there's a need for it in your area, I mean,
Well, I got to get it done to start with. So, I mean, I hear you guys use like the silicone sand or something.
What's that?
Use the silicone sand or something.
Yes, actually what I use is Black Beauty. It's a silicon carbide. It doesn't have any silica in it at all, which, I mean, technically all sand is going to break down to small particles. It's harmful. You want to be protective when you're blasting, but it is just the current product that has 0 silica sand in it, so it's not any kind of health hazards or anything like that as far as the laws go. But yeah, I mean, you're still, anything, you want the most aggressive thing possible. The concrete itself, you're going to take off the antiquing generally, and if there's stain down, you might damage that, but it will not affect, even especially color hardener, and that's what a lot of people think a lot of times when I talk to them about what the kind of colors they have or if it's going to affect their colors. They think if they have a color hardener on there, the powder surface just as their color, it's going to take that off. I've actually found it actually does less to that. That color hardener is such a good top coat that when I'm done, it actually doesn't look really any different at all, besides taking off the antiquing. Now, with integral color, sometimes it does want to sprawl and open up a little more, but generally still, once you're done antiquing it and resealing it, it looks amazing again, so.
Is there any sealers you can't sandblast off?
No, you can sandblast anything. Yeah. Hey, and the other thing too, if you find a local sandblaster that has a mobile unit, they'll do it for you. That's how I started. I had sandblast guys that.
They don't have to specialize in sandblasting.
Yeah, they don't have to. Yeah, they don't have to. Nobody specializes in sandblasting concrete, but the sandblaster. You know, anybody that does sandblasting, like goes out and blasts metal or whatever for trucks or whatever it would be, can still do it, you know, for you. Yeah, Doug.
That was my question. Now you're an Aquablast guy. He's got an attachment for a pressure washer that injects sand.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience using that? I mean, that's something that all of us could go and get. And
you know what? Personally, I've never tried one of those. You know, I don't know how well it would work, but I am very interested in trying it. Yeah, I mean, I think that.
Yeah, I tried it once. It was on actually just a broom finish. The customer went out and put sealer over the top of some of these cure and seal. And what we found with it, because the pattern's so narrow, and Billy knows more about sandblasting, it didn't seem to be effective where we couldn't be profitable how many hours we were there trying to do the job. With the wet sandblaster.
It was like a 0 degree tip, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean you could spread it out, but it kind of like the concrete was over 28 days old, but what it was making burn marks. I was watching my guy, me and him would play with it and see. We weren't really satisfied with the look. Now, granted, if you're going in restaining, you might be able to cover that stuff up, but we kind of backed off and said, we don't want to do this again.
Hey, Billy. Yeah. Sandblasting versus high pressure hot water.
If the hot water will take it off, I mean, absolutely go with that. I haven't really found a process with that works that well. Sandblasting, I know I can go through anything. I've gone through Sherwin-Williams H&C. They have a product that's, you know, very thick. It's very rubbery. I had a customer last year who had a pull deck where they put it on far too thick. It was color coded and it was very rubbery. I was concerned. It was the most rubbery thing I've ever had to blast through. And again, really heavy. They had bubbling everywhere, looked horrible. And because it was a solid color, normally when I blast, you're trying to just get off to the point where if you can't really visibly see it, you're to the point where if you have 99% of it off, you're fine. With it, it's color coded in there, you know, you have to get 100% off, otherwise you're going to see little specks of the color here and there. I had that one completely off. It took longer than normal, but I still went through it. After doing that one, I would say there's no topical coating that sandblasting won't take off. So that's why I just stay with that process. I know it works. I know how to do it. There's no dealing with a stripper or even if you're using a hot water pressure washer, I imagine there's still large portions of sealer that come off at once. When you're sandblasting, it just turns it into a dust, basically. So you recollect as much of that as you can. Most of it stays close to you. It's a fairly clean process, despite what you would think of sandblasting.
Have you ever done that with a hot water pressure washer and it came off?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not very effective.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I've never had good luck with like
it's just hit and miss.
It's a lot slower product. And another thing, Billy, tell them about like when you do it, it's opening the profile too.
Right, and that's what I was saying as far as with the color hardener. The color hardener, it still opens it up slightly to make it a little bit more porous with about where you want it to. And if you look in the front sidewalk out here, I actually sandblasted this, and I sandblasted that twice actually because we had acid stain on some of the rocks we wanted to get off and redo. So this is about as opened up as you'll see a color hardener surface after sandblasting out here. What that does is it adds to your anti-slip because it's a more porous surface, and two, it allows the sealer to penetrate into the concrete better and get a better bond. So you really get some actual benefit out of sandblasting besides the fact that you're correcting a problem.
I've had jobs that were, I don't know, probably, that I had sandblasted probably back in the, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And it's amazing, those jobs, once you've sandblasted it and recoated it, I mean, you might get 5 to 7 years out of it.
You haven't resealed that one?
No.
Once. Yeah, that was like five, 6 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's
that
fine, it
looks
still looks great. Because it's better about, number one, all the moisture's out of it. Okay, number two, it has a profile. But those are the two things that never usually happen. The sealer goes on. Yeah, it makes, when he does it, what would you say, it's like 220 sandpaper maybe or something? Or?
Yeah, or I would say it might be a little rougher than that. But again, I mean, when you're seeing it unsealed, it's obviously a lot rougher. When you seal it, I mean, you're filling in a good bit of the porousness. But the nice thing is, too, if somebody has any kind of a slip concern, I've had a couple customers who simply wanted their topical sealer blasted off just because they were concerned about slipping, or they've had issues with people slipping on it. And so there is nothing better for an anti-slip surface than bare concrete. At that point, you have to tell them, well, then we can't antique. It's going to look chalky. But if they're okay to deal with that because they're completely fed up with it being too slippery, then sandblasting and putting a penetrating sealer is a solution. And now they also have the color boost, which would work well too, because it still allows the sealer to to penetrate better and still allow the surface to be porous and allow for better slip or anti-slip.
You have one?
Could you just describe your typical process? Like if you don't sandblast using Rejuvenator, then you follow up with an actual sealer, or you just stop with that?
No, with the Rejuvenator, you're saying if I'm just going out to...
Yes.
Yes, he was asking, with the Rejuvenator, what was my normal process as far as resealing? Do I just put Rejuvenator down and walk away, or do I add sealer after, I believe? All right. Yeah, I mean, normally when I go out to talk to a customer, again, if I go through a little bit of a process, every job's different. It's not like one size fits all, and I can go out and say, okay, I just look at it for 5 minutes and say it needs resealed. No, I'm going to go out there, and I am going to go through a little bit of a process like what's on this sheet here, which we'll hand out at, I don't know what point you want to. Yeah, this is their flow chart that they're going to be handing out to customers and contractors from now on, along with the survival kits there. And what this allows you to do is go through kind of the process I honestly go through, and this is a process that Jason helped me develop, and it simply allows you to kind of take out the questions of, and basically if there's anything going wrong, if I go out there and I see it's white, or I know it's older than 8 years old, if it's bubbled really bad everywhere, you know, things that tell me that there's more than just a slight application problem, or the sealer there was a little bit of moisture. You know, if something I can tell that's seriously wrong, and usually I'll take Rejuvenator with me to every single estimate I do, and I'll paint a little square, and I'll tell them, now, I'll give you your estimate and everything, but it's still kind of be varying on what happens with this block. If in 2 weeks that block looks great from the Rejuvenator in any kind of a problem area, then we're probably going to go ahead with Rejuvenator. And at the same time, again, with resealing on top of that, if it needs resealed, you're going to have to just go through that process on your own. I mean, again, you don't want to have it so thick where it's not breathing, but at the same time, when it's wearing down, obviously any job you've seen that's older than 4 years old that's only been sealed once, there is going to be uneven wear. It never wears perfectly even. And that's another thing you can do with Rejuvenator too. If you spray down those areas where there's still sealer at, and you reseal the whole thing afterwards, it allows so you don't have quite as thick or quite a bonding issue between that old sealer. Because sometimes you can have areas in the shade next to a house, and after 3 reseals, everything else is fine that's been in the sun, but right next to that house, it's, you know, it's way thicker than it needs to be. So with Rejuvenator, what you're allowing it to do, because it's also thinning the sealer, when it gets back to its liquid state and you're rolling it around like that and redistributing it, it's thinning down what's there. So yeah, you want to put sealer generally back on top of. Now, again, what we'd mainly recommend just using Rejuvenator by itself for would simply be if there's too much sealer already there and they don't need a reseal, but they want it to be shiny again and they're willing to pay the money to do that, then put Rejuvenator by itself down. But generally, when you put Rejuvenator down in a normal reseal process, it would simply be to allow a better adhesion. So yeah, you would normally be putting sealer back down over top of that.
And you would recommend, I mean, basic one that we're looking at, you know, it's all pocked, you know, it's a stamped driveway and stuff, so it's pocked, and then, you know, they're frustrated, wish they never would have done it. So I don't know what that issue is, but so in this situation, I think we did pick up some Rejuvenator. But then I'm just wondering, do we need to go another step? You know?
Here's my thought on that is, if Rejuvenator solves the problem, then leave it alone. I mean, by how it looks. Do one block. Here's the thing. If you put Rejuvenator down and in about 10 minutes it's getting sticky, you can feel it on your fingers, there's sealer there. You don't need more sealer on there. At this point, it is all looks. So if Rejuvenator solves the problem and it looks great, by all means, leave it alone. I get a lot of calls where somebody says, hey, I just put a coat of sealer down. It looks great. Do I need another one? Like, no. If it looks great after one, go home. Don't compound the problem by just piling more sealer on there. You know, if it's got sealer on there, it's protected. It's doing its thing. It's all about looks. So if it looks good, leave it alone. Simplify. You know, don't get locked into you have to have, you know, all this sealer on there every year.
So what about like the slip resistant additives? Is that something to try to stay away from now? Or?
His question was slip resistant additives. So we sell like 3 or 4 different, you know, grit sizes of slip resistance. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're using like a 25% solid sealer, you really want to put something like that in. We have stuff that you can barely even see, and it does a pretty nice job all the way to stuff that you actually could see on there, but would make it really, really anti-skid. But the whole point of this is to go to something like the D1 or even better, the Color Boost. With Color Boost, you will never even have to put anti-skid in it, because after you put that sealer on and it's dry, it's not going to be any slipperier than it was to start off with. So if you're using something heavy, yeah, you definitely want to put that in. If you're using something like Color Boost, you don't need to.
Testing between the xylene base and water base. I mean, is there a good way to do that? Ask someone, you know, what was on there. They're like, I have no idea. Does it matter? How do you deal with that?
Right. Yeah, his question was, how do you know if it was solvent-based or water-based? So which one of you two want to take this?
No, yeah, absolutely. That's again where the xylene, I mean, if it's melting it, and it's the same thing with water-based or if it's before the VOC law change, either one, if you have old sealer on there or if you have water-based sealer, xylene or Rejuvenator, any kind of solvent, it's not going to melt it. So if you're not getting in, you said about 10 minutes, I think it's a little bit less than that. Usually when I test it, I paint a little area down, and if you kind of keep moving it, within a minute or two, you're going to feel tackiness if it's there. If you don't feel any tackiness from the solvent on the sealer, within a few minutes, it's going to eventually dissipate within that time, and at that point, you know that you have either a water-based or you have the old sealer there. So that's what I generally do. I mean, xylene or any kind of solvent like that, xylene or Rejuvenator is what I recommend. Those are the best two as far as melting stuff, where you can be certain that you are melting it if there's something there.
Do you ever get like, if there's and Todd, maybe you can help me with this. Like sometimes, like the Rejuvenator actually might melt into the water base a little bit, but it literally like just turns it to mush and it won't ever get hard again. Is that would that be right?
Right. It can act like a paint. It can act like a paint stripper actually to a water base. So you know, it's not going to get sticky like a solvent. If it's solvent based, it's going to get sticky. If it's water based, you actually would probably see a little bit of white blisters start to form after 10 to 20 minutes possibly. You might not see anything because a lot of water bases, even though they're breaking down, have they have better solvent resistance on the front end. But if it's allowed to set for a while, it will start to blister, and you'll see sometimes just white little blisters start to come in, and it's pretty obvious, but it won't be sticky.
Yeah, so, I mean, the rule of thumb is if Rejuvenator can't melt it, it's not resealable. That's just how it is. If you guys should all, if you guys are doing reseals, even on your stuff that you did, 3 years ago, if you go back out there, for some reason that Rejuvenator does not melt it, sealer will not stick to that. That's one thing that we found out. That's when me and Billy started talking about this, and that's when we kind of started. And once I had that epiphany, because there's sealers out there before the VOC change that are not resealable. I've found that out. We cannot melt it with Rejuvenator. I took the strongest solvents that are available, and it would not melt it. And if you cannot melt it, if you can't melt into the other layer of sealer that's on there, it will not bond to it. So that Rejuvenator, that test has to be done.
You guys, like three in a row, I've had customers for doing decorative work inside, and their complaints about the VOCs. And Jeff, we just had this conversation because we're going to make the marble look about getting the pop from the color. But these people were on two different sides of this, state part of Pittsburgh, but they're so worried about the VOC of the sealers and stuff like that because it's an indoor. One of them's even critical. She's worried about the, for even VCD tile. So she's looking for a green alternative.
What Todd? You want to answer that, Todd, or Jeff, or I don't care.
Well, are you after a gloss as well?
Well,
or
we
just
discussed
protect?
that with her. We're trying to get her where she's going to be happy with it. Obviously the pictures that we showed her are very high gloss looks from when we did churches and stuff like that, or garages. So, you're trying to obtain the look that she wants, but not discourage her with what she's going to end up with.
Okay, well, if you're wanting to just pop the color and keep it from being slippery, the color boost. You don't have the fumes from the VOCs, so you don't have the lingering smell, and you don't have slip resistance. It penetrates in, enhances the color, just as you would. Just picture a regular sealer on there without the gloss. You're going to get that color.
These are we're doing Americode, so it's it's polymer based. It's not regular concrete.
Okay, yeah, and it will still bond on something like that, because you never know somebody's formulation. You might want to test something like the color boost because it penetrates in, and that polymer could cause a difference. Everybody's overlays are different, so some have a higher polymer content, some have less, and so the way that penetrates in and forms enhances the color could be different with that system versus another. So on that, if you didn't want a gloss, you would have to test that first. The other would be using your the water base. I'm sorry. The clear guard. Yeah, the D guard. WB25. You won't have the smell. It's it's no different. It wouldn't smell any different than like a floor wax. That you won't get as much enhancement as a solvent-based sealer, but you will get some enhancement, and you won't have if it's an overlay, you're still going to have some texture, so it won't be too slick.
So what would I be selling that for maintenance on with either of those type of sealers?
Yeah, just an interior wax. Yes. And there's matte finish wax available too. And they have that available as well. That if you don't want the shine. So.
The other thing you could, depending on the situation there, the other thing would be 100% solid polyaspartic for a really high gloss, deep look. Obviously there's depending on what it is, you might have to do some extra prep in that case. But if that solves the problem too, because that you do get the polyaspartic epoxy look in 100% solids, it really doesn't smell. Like you said, it'd be like painting your walls.
No, I'm just curious, if you determine that you're going to need a sandblast, like a cost per square foot type of thing that can be factored in as we're quoting, just to give them an idea what a typical job might cost?
Sure, yeah. Sandblasting in general, and this isn't just me, but it's usually about $1 a square foot And that's a pretty even price. I mean, the sandblasting by itself you can be fairly consistent with. Now, when you're talking about reseals that don't include sandblasting, things vary a lot. But when you sandblast, yeah, I mean, about $1 a square foot. And then obviously, again, generally at least you're going to be re-antiquing, sometimes restaining things. You might have some repair work to do. I generally try to steer away from patching too many things. I tell them, you know, antiquing does a lot when you have a little sprawling and things like that to cover little white stones and pop outs. But so all the things, depending on the job, I mean, it varies a lot, but yeah, about $1 a square foot for your sandblasting, and then whatever you have for your sealing after that. I mean, that varies for everybody a little bit, but anywhere from, I'd say, $2 to $3 for the entire process a square foot. So I mean, again, that's where I was saying, if there's no one in your area doing it, and there's a demand for it, I mean, it's worthwhile to get into or to start a crew for, so.
And it was cheaper from them than tearing it out and starting over.
Yeah, absolutely.
$3 a square foot's a lot better than 10, so.
Yeah.
I got a square foot driveway coming up. I need to pour it next week. What do you suggest for sealer?
Okay,
4,000 square feet,
stamped or regular?
stamped.
4,000 stamped. Wow, you know what, honestly, with that, you let that thing cure out 30 days or whatever, and then I would, on a driveway, I would use one of those color boosts, because here's the reason why. With the new color boost, and we're going to be using this stuff, we're going to be using the color boost and the water-based and the salt. We have color boost and water-based and solvent-based, and then we're also going to be using the D1. We poured a stamped pad. It's been about a week ago out here. Okay, and we'll put those on so you guys can see what they look like later on today. You guys can hang out. Now, the reason why we want to use one of those is because it enhances the color, all right, but it doesn't leave a film. Now, these have penetrating agents in them too. Anytime your sealer is actually down in the concrete, it's better because it only wears off as the concrete itself wears out. And they're a lot easier to reseal if they do want to reseal them. Okay, so on a driveway where you're going to be driving, if you put regular solvent-based acrylic on there, it's a nightmare because the where traffic, you know, they're driving on the same thing every time they're turning into their garage, they're whatever. There's going to be spots that are always going to not look the same. So that's where this comes in.
Sure. To get back to his question on this big stamp job.
Yeah.
How quickly should he apply the color boost?
Definitely on the color boost, I would try to wait 30 days. Now, a cure, I would use just a regular dissipating cure on it. Yeah, well, no, not the seal, just the cure. No, the color boost is a penetrating sealer, okay? But just to cure it initially, because you're going to wait that 30 days. Yes, color boost. We have it in solvent-based and water-based. It's a penetrating sealer that doesn't leave a film, but it enhances the color. Okay, so it enhances the color. If it doesn't have a film, it can't wear off. So that's like the best thing that's ever happened to stamped concrete, in my opinion, because everybody wants that color enhancement, but but then we have problems when we put it on too thick or with the moisture or whatever. It would be impossible to make these bubble or put them on too thick because there's a little bit of acrylic, but most of it's penetrating. What's that? A dissipating cure would be something that you spray on that over time, like over a course of 30 days, it wears off, and then you would have to just pressure wash it before you would add this, and it would come off. All it does is creates a film to cure the concrete. Because a lot of people want to, that's a big thing is curing it. You slow it down, it makes it harder. So that cures it, and then you go back and put something like this on as the final seal.
Okay, so I'm gonna change gears here. I'm more of a coatings kind of guy. Okay, so I've done industrial for years, and now that I've broken off, I'm doing some overlays. But on the garages, I'm using epoxies, and then the top coat's a polyurethane, which is, in some of the jobs I've done 7 years ago, where it comes out to the apron, where it's supposed to UV, is not coming up. But the ones that I've done in the last few years, it's just peeling right there at that apron or where it's exposed to the to the UVs, so it's peeling away there, and then, so now I've got a couple issues. How do I stop that from happening? But then, if I have a color underneath that clear to get that clear off there to kind of repair that, I'm kind of getting into the color or the chip coating or whatever, and so then I try to patch that, and then it's kind of yellowed a little bit farther in there. So wherever I patch, I mean, if I can repair the clear sealer that's coming off, or eliminate, or find a product that's going to adhere out there, it's not going to break down for the UVs, okay, that's one thing. But how do I repair the ones that have slightly yellowed, the clear coat on top? You know, you try to patch that because you're getting into the color, so you got to redo that, and then you got to put the clear on top of that. So there's the distinct line. There you go, boom.
Well, number one, I'll say this right off the bat: a patch is a patch. Anytime you ever patch something, I mean, you're going to see it. You know, the only thing you can do is just try to blend in the best you can to start with. But that's probably a good one for Todd, probably.
Yeah, and you and I were speaking out there before we came in here about that, and of course the problem he was talking about you had a primer, then an intermediate coat, and then a top coat of clear, and the intermediate coat is colored. Yes. Okay. So inside he has it's fine. Inside the garage, typically it's fine. Right at the apron outside the garage door, he's having delamination from the top coat from the intermediate coat. And what that looks like, and this isn't Decocrete's products that he's speaking about. This is someone else's, I won't name who. So anyways, urethanes, it's a polyurethane top coat that he's using. Urethanes have a low yellowing tolerance, just their chemistry in general. Some floor coatings manufacturers, most of their products are inside, so they don't add UV inhibitors or enough or the right type. That's where inside, and that's my theory as to why that's happening outside the apron. UV degradation is deteriorating that top coat, and it's lifting off of the intermediate coat. And the intermediate coat is probably still okay because there's pigments in there. Like titanium dioxide is a natural UV absorber, and which scatters the light. So you're not seeing that degrade so much. Plus, the urethane probably has some UV inhibitor of some sort in there or absorber. So anyways, that's what I believe is causing your problem. And they have, for what it's worth, they have the urethane or a polyaspartic that go over there. It has UV inhibitors in that, and that you wouldn't see that difference of the lamination there versus inside. So that's the quick fix to your future coatings is to use their products. But at the same time, the patching of it, you know, it's going to be hard to get that clear coat off of the color without disturbing the color. And is it a quart system? Is it colored quartz, or is this just colors? Yeah, okay.
Who doesn't?
So it could be a full broadcast or a partial. Not really seen it so much in the full broadcast,
right,
as much as the partial chips.
Okay.
So,
I got an idea for that. Well, what might be better to do is just make a straight line across there and do something completely different. Put a color, like do a different color, or do a different chip there, or do something to make it look like you tried to do that, rather than, you know, when you fix it and then use Decocrete's products, and then you won't have to worry about it. Oh.
You said there was some ambering going on, like inside the garage, carrying in a little bit from the top coat.
On how often they have that door open.
Right. You got that little shadow.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it kind of yellows
right
halfway or so.
You know, is Malice brush here?
They're not here this year.
Okay.
But we got some samples.
You know, a solution would be just to grind it all down.
Right, yeah.
Put clear down there, but some people don't like that. They want the color to go all over the edge.
And that's really what you've got to do there. It really, you start over, charge them. You know, I don't know if is it warranty work.
Some of it, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the best way. Just start over. Patching in a garage, trying to match that up is a nightmare, and it's never a good thing.
So a polyaspartic?
Polyaspartic works great. It's quick, good top coat there. And they also have, if you don't want something so fast, if it's really in the heat of the summer, they have slow versions of the polyaspartic. So, you have a little more open time to work with it to keep your roller marks out in a hot day with the garage door open, and, so.
The differences or advantages of a polyaspartic versus a polyurethane, UV stability?
Well, no, UV's stability of both are fine if it's formulated properly. That part's fine. Polyaspartics are, you can get a higher solids material at a lower viscosity, for one thing. Urethanes, if you're getting up 70, 80, 90, 100%, the viscosities, there are some out there, you just don't see them that often, but at the higher solids. But polyaspartics, you have lower viscosities, but polyaspartics have faster reaction times. A urethane and epoxy typically 7 to 14 days for a full chemical cure. So even though it's hard overnight or X amount of hours, it continues to chemically bond and fuse or react over 7 to 14 days. Where a polyaspartic polyurea, that reaction starts quicker, it develops quicker. And over instead of 7 to 14 days, it's 3 to 5 days, 7 days max on a full cure. So, and the other is just the return to service time. So the polyaspartics were designed for steel coatings, for bridges and different things originally, and then the people that developed that chemistry originally realize, hey, this could be used in the concrete industry for rapid return to service. And so, especially smaller jobs, garages, small offices, or, you don't see a lot of people doing 100,000 square foot warehouse floor with a polyaspartic because they cost a little more than urethanes. But yeah, if you're going to do a garage, you did the epoxy, cast in, or say you epoxy and an intermediate primer, then an intermediate coat, and then a top coat. Well, you're coming back, it's a 3-trip deal. Grind it, apply the primer, leave, come back later that day or the next day. That's 3 steps. You can do that whole thing with a polyaspartic in 1 day, depending on the size of the job, of course.
No margin for error there, though.
What's that?
No margin for error. One day is just, 2 days I think would be more comfortable.
2 days is always, it's always better, to do that. But a lot of people, if the homeowners don't mind hearing grinders at 6 in the morning,
Yeah. Yeah, normally
you
we
can
say that 1 day means applying in 1 day.
Yeah. So, but typically, if it was me, I would grind and get it all done, patched, or cracks filled, whatever if needed, and prime, and then come back next morning and basically be done by noon and gone. Or you can make one long day. Some people say, in 8 hours, that's a little quick. Make it a 12-hour day, 14-hour day, and you can do it if the temperature's right. But those were designed for that. They've replaced a ton of epoxy through the years, and we've all had a lot of epoxy experience, and obviously you have as well. Epoxies are great. We sell epoxies as well, so we've got both systems. But if on the smaller jobs, somebody could really make a lot of money quick with polyaspartic systems and relatively no issues. We really don't see issues when especially on chip systems. Yeah, on chip systems versus epoxy systems. Epoxies are more temperamental because of their viscosity, outgassing different things. You see certain things. The polyaspartics, they react so quick. That reactions are starting so quick, it's already blocking out your moisture, your humidity levels, and different things. And humidity actually accelerates their cure, which can be good or it can be bad. But with epoxies, moisture, next thing you know, you don't have gloss in your epoxies because it's like a sponge. It pulls the moisture out of the air. And you can have long-term issues like water. I've seen water pull into epoxy systems where people have done garages and it's raining outside and they put a tarp up and it pulls it in. Well, it's sat there and gotten the epoxies, and over time that water sunk to the bottom, manages to seep under the epoxies, and over time lifts the epoxies up, and you've got water under there, and it's actually from the atmosphere, not hydrostatic from underneath. Now, those are odd instances, but a polyaspartic starts to react so quick that it's already developing its performance properties, water resistance, chemical resistance, quicker than an epoxy or a polyurethane. So
You probably get a little bit more like abrasion resistance and hot tire pickup resistance off of polyaspartic too.
Versus
the top coats.
Versus a urethane?
Yeah.
They're very similar, but they're very similar. Right. Yeah. He said he was mentioning hot tire pickup resistance. The urethanes and polyaspartics are very similar in that aspect as far as hardness. A lot of polyaspartics actually are harder than polyurethanes, but it depends on how they're developed. Some people have a little more flexible polyurethanes, elongations, which is the flexibilities of the system, can be on the higher side for certain reasons, but when you're putting thinner coats down, the flexibility is not as important. If the concrete shifts, it's going to crack the urethane or epoxy at that point, so the flexibility isn't as important on a thin mill system. So, some polyurethanes are more flexible than polyaspartic, and the hot tire pickup in that aspect would be better with a polyaspartic than a urethane. But it's the speed on smaller jobs is really why you see a lot of polyaspartics being done, and the low viscosity. In applying these products, you can be done with a roller instead of a squeegee, and the effort it takes to apply the thicker coatings sometimes.
Like they were saying, that particular product, we have had, like 0 callbacks on that. And we deal with, between the 3 stores, we're probably dealing with, well over, 1,500 customers, we've just had really good luck with that product, especially in garages, in a basement or something like that, the smell and stuff, but in a garage, it's great. Very extremely durable. In fact, we've had it on our floors back here for 5 or 6 years. We run our forklifts on them with 3,000 pounds on our forklifts, run across them. They're still holding up good. The only place where you start to see a little bit of wear is like where the cuts, because we didn't fill the cuts. If we would have filled the cuts first, I think it wouldn't even chip off, but a little bit right there where our tires, where our lifts go over top of it, it's chipping a little bit. But out in the center of them, it's fine.
What would you fill the cuts with?
We'll be doing a little demo with that too, our Quik Fix. It's a special, the whole system, the whole polyarmor system is very fast. Okay, so the Quik Fix, literally you can put it in a saw cut and you overfill it a little bit and you can grind it flush in like 15 minutes to where it's completely, and then you can go right over top of it with start the system. What a lot of guys are doing with the polyarmor system, just like they were saying, you have the prep, they're able to go prep a job half a day or whatever, and then go do if they get a couple of them lined up, then they'll go and do the whole system in the afternoon, and then prep the next one, so you can get a system going with the prepping and and the coating, and you can hammer jobs. You can make good money doing that.
Thanks for watching, and check out the rest of the Deco-Crete channel for other concrete-related videos. To stay updated on our new posts, subscribe to us on YouTube.